Good. So welcome everyone. I'm Dr. T. Ayodele Ajayi, like I said, and I'm the convener of Tripath Care Emotional Wellbeing Hub. Thank you for joining us tonight. This is the September edition of our Tripath Care Emotional Wellbeing Hub, and it's really a delight to see everyone joining nice and early. I'm going to share my slides, but before I do, just whilst I'm doing that, I would also like to know, please just let us know where you've joined us from on the chat. If you could just type on the chat to let us know where you are joining us from, that would be really great, so we can know where you've come from and where you've joined us from today. Please just, so we can, it's just always good to have a feel of those who are in the room. Okay. Oh, wow. Bishop Jonathan Alao is joining us from Sweden. Thank you for doing that. Okay, Chatham, Kent. Somebody's MK is joining us from Chatham, Kent. Okay, London Southeast.
Hello.
Hull, right, okay. Dr. Shem Bukola is joining us from Hull. Okay, let's keep that coming as we... Right, Mansfield. Okay, thank you for joining us all the way from Mansfield. Okay, sunny, not so sunny Kent. That's my twin brother. And Bishop Collade is joining us from Hillsbury. And there's somebody from Nigeria. Okay, that's fine. Right, okay. So let's just keep that coming. And whilst we keep that going, we are then going to get the show running. There's quite a lot that we've got. Thank you, Sonia, for joining us from London. So it was the World Suicide Prevention Day on the 10th of September, and every year that's when the World Suicide Prevention Day is celebrated. The reality is that suicide prevention is now a global concern. It's been for a few years, but post-COVID, that has become even more of a concern. And currently, for those of us who live in the UK, we do know that that's even more of a concern now with some of the recent news in terms of the energy crisis, in terms of the energy crisis, as well as what's been happening with the Bank of England, the interest rates, and the concerns that are generated on account of that, about how people generally are faring. So it's good to just talk about suicide prevention today, to have thoughts about that. And I want to start by saying that this is a public mental health education event. It's not a personal consultation by any means. Even though I'm a consultant psychiatrist, this is not meant to be a personal consultation. I have done my due diligence to make sure that the information provided is as accurate and as relevant as possible. However, should anyone be thinking about taking major decisions about their mental well-being, about their mental care, it is very crucial that such people consult with their mental providers. The other thing I wanted to say is that this event is actually being recorded on video. And if I took consent earlier and said that if anyone didn't want them to be, if anyone doesn't want to appear on the video, you can switch off your camera, or you could, and in addition, you could use a pseudonym so that you are not identifiable. This would then be uploaded onto our YouTube channel. So it's always good to know the person who's convened the meeting. And this part of the event is something that I admit that I'm not always very keen to do, but I need to do. And that's because I need to say a bit about myself. The reason being that it's important for those who are in the room to know who is talking to them and where I've come from in terms of my background, what's brought us here. So everyone, like I said, I'm a consultant psychiatrist. I work in the NHS. It's also a privilege to be a fellow of the Royal College of Psychiatrists in the United Kingdom. and I've practiced psychiatry in the UK for the last 23, 24 years. In addition to that, I've also been involved in public mental health education, particularly to church communities for the last 20 years, really, since about 2003. And I have had the privilege of featuring in some of the government initiatives in terms of public mental health. In the last two autumns, I've featured in the Office of Health Improvement and Disparity public mental health campaign, particularly post-COVID. And most recently over the summer, I featured in a number of BBC radio interviews to do with faith and mental health. I also I'm involved in a number of charitable activities. One of them is this one. There are a few other ones. I do sit on a board of a number of charities, and I also do have the privilege of chairing a couple of them. So that's my charitable background. And in terms of the Tripart Care is an initiative that started after during the lockdown, actually, during the second lockdown. And we have been hosting meetings since June 2021, regular meetings. The very first meeting of this shade was in February 2020. But since then, we've been doing this monthly, where we look at a particular theme that has to do with mental health. And Tripart Care, as you probably can deduce, it means that we are made up of we are spirit, we are made up of a soul, and we live in a body. So it looks at mental well-being from a wholesome and holistic point of view. And I'm going to speak about that later on. The other initiatives I'm involved in, I'm also the founder and the convener of Mentor into Medicine. Mentor into Medicine is a mentoring organization that supports young people from disadvantaged backgrounds to achieve their goal of getting into medical school. So we support people from either ethnically or socially disadvantaged, economically disadvantaged backgrounds to support them with their medical school application. Just to round up on all this, my profile, I'm also a published author, and I currently write. I'm a mental health columnist for two regular publications. Keep the Faith magazine, which is a Black ethnic minority Christian faith magazine. And also, I also write regularly I have a twice a month column for Testify newspaper, which is also Black, which is actually a London newspaper for the Christian community. And my role, I do have a pastoral role as a youth pastor in my local, in the church I attend. And I also do a lot of public mental health education in churches, speaking to church groups and church leadership, and delivering courses and training. So that's the contact. And if you wanted to rave about today, I'm hoping that you will find today very helpful, educational, and things that you can apply in your life and in the life of your community, in the life of your charity, in the life of your church or corporate body. I'm hoping that, and if you wanted to publish anything about today, the hashtag to use would be Tripart Care. That's the hashtag if you wanted to do anything in the public, in the social media space. And those are contact details, which I'm going to repeat again when at the end of the session. And just to say that at the end of today, at the end of this meeting, this is going to be for 90 minutes. We usually keep to time. I will be making a big announcement of something of the next phase for Tripart Care. And that's something I'm really very excited about, because I think it's going to be a game changer. And I encourage you to please wait till that time. We've looked at those who are in the room. And I've talked about the Tripart Care model. The Tripart Care model adopts a biopsychosocial spiritual model. So I always say that the Royal College of Psychiatrists has a special interest group, a spirituality special interest group. And currently, one of the things that psychiatry in the UK and actually in other parts of the world are saying is that actually that there is that as psychiatrists, it's important for us to be knowledgeable about the spiritual challenges or the spiritual aspect of our patients, not their challenges, but the fact that 50% of patients actually say that they resort to their spirituality to cope with their mental difficulties. So that's something that is becoming crucial in terms of delivering care and delivering holistic care. So suicide prevention is the theme for today, and we are going to go into that right away. The things I'm hoping to get through today, I'm expecting that the people in the room today are either members or leaders of communities, members or leaders of churches, members or leaders of charities, members or leaders of corporate organizations who are able to make a change. Because the reality is that every one of us can be involved in preventing suicide. Every one of us. The theme for the from 2021 to 2023, the theme for the World Suicide Prevention Days have been creating hope via action, so that we can all, through our actions, actually create hope that will help somebody to be able to consider living if they came to the point in which they were going to take their lives. So today, I'm going to look at suicide. I'm going to look at the myths that are around it, the figures of suicide, which is staggering and alarming. Also, what works. The reality is that a number of people believe that suicide prevention is not possible. That's not correct. It's actually possible to prevent suicide. And part of the things that we can do is what we are doing today, learning about the incidents, learning about the event. So we are also going to then share skill tools and tips on what you can do. How do you even spot somebody who is suicidal? If you find somebody who is suicidal, how do you support them? What can you do as an organization? I'm going to share statistics that actually show that, for instance, 3 out of 5 people, employees, say that their mental health problems are related to work. So that means that in our communities, in our workplaces, in our churches, in our corporate bodies, there are things that we can do to bring down those figures. Because if mental problems, if people, 3 out of 5 employees actually say that, that means that there's something about the workplace that can be done, whichever workplace, whether it's a charity, a church, or a corporate body, or even a community, where we can actually put things in place to make sure that our organizations are pro-mental well-being and pro-emotional well-being. So what can we do, and I'm very importantly going to signpost to suicide prevention resources. And then we are then going to discuss next steps, and I'm going to take questions at the end of the day. So that's a whistle-stop tour. So now let's start with the myths. There are certain things by the nature of my job and being a member of the community, and also having been involved in public mental health education for the last 20 years. There are a number of things I come across, and a number of things that you see also commonly about the misconceptions about suicide. One of them is that suicide is not preventable. People think that people are going to take their lives anyway, whatever you do, but that's not correct. We actually know that if there's an intervention that is timely and it's delivered at the right time, and it's delivered in an appropriate way, that it can actually prevent people from taking their lives. And this is something that we've seen happen, and we see happen every day, both in the community and in our clinical practice. So the first thing I want to say today is that if you belong to that school of thought that suicide is not preventable, I encourage you to change that, to challenge that notion today, and to let you know that there is something you can do. Because when we say it's not preventable, we then throw up our hands and think there is nothing I can do actually. So there's no point. But over and over again, we know that that's not accurate. Just as a case in point, I remember a few years ago, seeing in consultation, and I'm making this case so anonymous that you wouldn't be able to recognize this person. But this was somebody who came into the consultation at the point in which they were at the lowest ebb of their lives, and they were really they were at the point in which they had had enough, and they thought they were done with life. But however, with appropriate intervention, they were able to, and they are still here now. So it's just important to make that point that for everyone who is on this call today is a potential person who can be active in preventing suicide. And the next point, which is also a myth or a misconception, is this: people that Suicide prevention is exclusive for mental health professionals. There's nothing further from the truth. Any person who cares about another human being, who is willing to have a conversation, a conversation, one human being caring for another in an empathic way, is able to is able to contribute to suicide prevention and is able to engage in that conversation. So we don't need to be psychiatrists. We don't need to be psychiatric nurses or psychologists or mental practitioners or mental professionals or mental school counselors in order to be successful in preventing suicide. Every one of us can be successful in doing it by learning the skills. And I hope that today, by the time we finish today, we would have a few tips and tools in our toolkit that we can take away with us to actually make this happen. So the other misconception that is also known is that sometimes people believe that, oh, I don't want to ask anyone about I can see this person who already looks like the weight of the world is on their shoulders. I see all the warning signs which I've read up about, which I've seen on the internet, which I've seen on social media, but I don't want to ask them. The reason I don't want to ask them is because I don't want to sow a seed in their thoughts. I don't want to be the person who is going to give them the idea. But the reality is that that's also not correct. That asking people about suicidal thoughts or suicidal intention does not make them do it. The reality is that suicide is something that people usually contemplate. And by asking them, you can only be saving somebody who is suicidal rather than actually sowing the seed. So it's always, the point I'm trying to make is it's always okay to ask. If in doubt, ask. If in doubt, ask. The worst that could happen is that they will then say, oh no, there's no such thing. But at least you would have given the benefit of the doubt and you possibly would have started the conversation with somebody who was potentially suicidal. So the fourth myth that we also come across generally is that sometimes people believe that suicide attempt is an attention-seeking behavior. I want to say today that that's also something that in our communities we need to walk away from. That usually when somebody attempts their life in any way, it's a sign of distress. It's a huge thing for somebody to come to the point in which they then decide that they no longer want to be here. It's a huge step. So if they do that, then it's something to take very, very seriously and to pay attention to. And so it's not something to be looked at flippantly and to think, oh yeah, that doesn't that was just a cry for help. That was attention-seeking behavior. It's not, but it's a way that sort of attitude or that sort of mindset actually prevents us from being active in a bid to create hope and to save lives. And the final one is that not every suicide death was from mental illness. Sometimes it's just the cares of life. Sometimes it's just the pressures of life. We've just been talking about the energy bill crisis. We've just been talking about concerns that because of unemployment rates, because of possible the financial pressures that people are facing, that of course we've also had within the last week that the Bank of England raised the interest rate, that all of those things, unemployment, housing problems, marital difficulties, divorces, separation from children, interpersonal difficulties, all of those things can actually result in people getting to a point in which they no longer want to be here. And that's why it's important for us to be equipped with the tools and the abilities to be able to engage in this conversation, to be confident about engaging in those conversations, and to be able to create hope by our actions. So how many people, what are the figures? What do the maths show when you look at suicide? The math shows that about 703,000 people die by suicide every year. That's quite a huge number. And you will note that I didn't say commit suicide, I actually said die by suicide, because that's one of the stigmatizing words that is used, that we sometimes inadvertently use without realizing it when we say somebody committed suicide. Because years ago, or up until the 60s, it was it was a crime punishable by law that when people attempted to take their lives. But that's not the case any longer. So it's inappropriate or inaccurate to say that somebody committed suicide, because suicide is no longer a crime. So people die by suicide. But what we also do know is that globally, about 0.8 of a million people die by suicide every year. And I feel that that's an underestimation, because depending on the country where the suicide is recorded, what we do find commonly is that when the coroners are not very sure, when there's no sure evidence, without a shadow of doubt, and when we are talking about sure evidence, we are looking at when there's no suicide note or when there's no final act to actually show that this person died by suicide. Many, many times an open verdict is given. So that's to tell us that actually there may even be many more suicides than this figure. And that's alarming. 0.8 million. That's 0.8 million, 0.8 million brothers, sisters, dads, moms, stepbrothers, stepmothers, cousins, uncles, work colleagues, members of our community, church members who have died by suicide. So that's huge. When one brings that message home to think about what it really means for that individual, then and one of the things we know is that for each person who dies by suicide, at least about 20 other people are affected by the impact of it. So they are left with guilt, they are left with all sorts of difficult emotions, including anger, including guilt, unresolved grief. So that's why it's important that we really take this seriously, and we do every bit that we can do to prevent those sad occurrences. And every 40-second interval, somebody dies by suicide, which means that since we started this about 15 minutes ago, think about how many suicides have taken place already. So that's how huge the figures we are talking about here. And that's why I'm hoping that everyone after today, if you've been indifferent or maybe you've just thought that there's nothing I can do, that you actually begin to see yourself as a potential person who can help in bringing down the global suicide figures. 20 million attempts every year. So it means that a lot of the people that attempt don't actually succeed, which is good news. But what we are hoping to do is to even bring down that number even further. And the other thing to note, which is I'm very passionate about, is that men more than women. Globally, the figures show that for men are twice as likely to take their lives than women are. In the UK, we know that those figures are even more in terms of men, because 75% of those who die by suicide in the UK are actually men. So that's already, we're already beginning to have a feel of what the figures look like and maybe some of the things that we can do. In the UK, for instance, approximately 6,000 people annually, and that equates to about 125 every week. But what I also wanted to emphasize today is also that currently there's also a new concern, particularly among young adults. The Office of Health Improvement and Disparities, which used to be Public Health England, Public Education England, Public Health Education England, actually noted that they carried out a survey just post-COVID, and they noted that the age group that reported that they were most adversely affected in their mental well-being were actually the young adults between the ages of 18 and 35. They were the ones that said about 53 or 54% of them actually said responded to the survey and said that they were adversely affected by their mental well-being. So what are the things to look out for? If there's somebody here who is saying, I'm a member of the community, I lead an organization, I'm a church leader, I'm a corporate leader, I run a business, maybe you've got 20 people who work in your auto mechanic workshop, or you've got people who work for you in whatever your organization is, or maybe you even work for a statutory organization. What are the things to look out for? We've talked about a previous suicide attempt. If for any reason you know that somebody's had a previous suicide attempt, the greatest risk factor for somebody dying by suicide is that they've attempted once. So that means that actually that was a missed opportunity, because when they attempted the first time, that would have been an opportunity to do something, to put systems in place to prevent it from happening again. So that's the first one. We've talked about the fact that men more than women. Also, we do know that more than half of those who take their life by suicide are actually less than 50-year-old. So that's also less than 50. Family history of suicide is something else. And particularly, I want to emphasize why, apart from knowing about suicide, the other thing that we can do actually in trying to prevent suicide is to know about depression. Because for somebody who has a history of for somebody who has a condition, who has a depressive illness, they are 20 times more likely than the Joe Bloggs on the street to take their life by suicide. So depression is something to be taken seriously. Depression is a clinical condition, and it should be taken as such, and it should actually be addressed. It shouldn't be seen as anything else, but to something to be taken seriously and to be addressed. So what else do we know? We know that things like social factors like living alone, poverty, and of course in the UK, we also do know that there are some figures showing that being from the Black ethnic minority background, either Black Caribbean, Black African, Asian, also puts one at higher risk. And of course, chronic physical illnesses, chronic pain, all of those, and importantly, the use of alcohol and illicit drugs. So cannabis, cocaine, amphetamines, and all the plethora of the hundreds of what are called novoactive substances, which are now in the market. Several of them, and they're always changing every day. The thing to note is that when people drink alcohol, or when they use street drugs, it lowers their inhibition, their natural tendencies to hold back, and it helps them to be less cautious and to hold back less from those type of impulsive acts of taking one's life. So that's the role that alcohol and substances play. They actually make one less cautious and less able to hold back from being impulsive in that way. So the good news is that there are statistics, research actually shows that it is possible to prevent suicide, and that's good. So what are the things that work? The first thing is that having a sense of community is a very good thing. There is quite a lot of research also supporting the fact that when people live in a place where there is a sense of community, not only are they more mentally well, not only are there less emotional problems, there is also, they also live longer. So there is a piece of research that actually shows that the Blue Zone community, they studied the Blue Zone community, where they had people who lived over 100 years. They had the greatest population of people, and there were 5 zones that they identified across the nations, across the globe. And one of the things they found out was that there was a keen sense of community. So really, a keen sense of community is a good thing. And we are best to produce that keen sense of community than in church. So that means that there is a challenge to church leaders, there's a challenge to church leadership to make sure that we are actually promoting that sense of keenness, that we are making sure that everybody feels included, that everyone feels that they belong to the community, and that nobody feels like they're on the fringes or that their needs are not being met. So first thing, community support to combat loneliness. The Mental Health Awareness Week in the UK in May, between the 9th and 13th of May, was themed on combating loneliness, because we know that loneliness is associated with mental difficulties, anxiety, depression. And of course, if somebody is lonely and they do not have anyone to confide in, we also do know that it could push them across, it could push them over the brink. So fostering community support and combating loneliness is something that we can do. And that's what every one of us can do. we can all look beyond ourselves and really reach out to people in our community, reach out to our neighbors who live alone, reach out to people we haven't seen in a long time. Just really be there to ask about people's welfare. It sounds like it's very trivial, but combating loneliness is one of the things. Community support to combat loneliness is one of the key things that has been proven to prevent suicide. And of course, there is also local education to support the community so that people are aware of what we are doing today, this evening. We're actually raising awareness and helping us to know what to look out for and how to do what we need to do. So local education, like we are doing, and if it's within your gifting to do that, if, for instance, you run an organization, I think one of the, if you run a charity, you run a corporate organization, one of the things that you can do in paying your dues in preventing suicide is to organize, to regularly organize suicide prevention, to organize events where people who are under your responsibility can actually get to know about mental difficulties and what to do about it. And in church, that's also something that we cannot now turn our backs on again. It's the elephant in the room and it's got to be addressed. And it's important that we make that information available to people. And I'm going to, towards the end of this, I'm going to be sharing thoughts on what we can do as church leaders to actually broach the issue of mental health in church and to make it in a way that it can be embraced. So that so we've talked about the fact that combating loneliness, sharing local education in the community. The other thing is that has to do with the media, the portrayal of suicide. The way the media reports suicide is very crucial. And it's important that the media, and all of us are members of the media now. All of us have a social media account. Last time I checked, they said the average person runs about 8 social media accounts. That was about a year or 2 ago. I'm sure that it's probably changed now. So every one of us can be responsible in the way we talk about mental well-being and mental health and the way we address it. You know, I run a clinic that is mainly attended by middle-aged men because it's an occupational health clinic. So it means that by the nature of the clinic, by the nature of the occupation that clinic is primarily for, it's the middle-aged men who have a tendency to be occupied in that role. And you know, one of the questions I ask, one of the questions I'm required to ask in the assessment is to ask them about mental problems. And you can't imagine how many times. In fact, I can almost bet that I run this clinic about once or twice a week, and I can almost vouch that in one clinic, at least I will have 3 or 4 clients who attend. When I ask them about mental problems, the first thing I hear is a giggle. It's a nervous giggle. It's like a laughter, and then they then say, "Oh, that's," and they then issue a disclaimer. And it just tells us the way society still views mental challenges, mental problems, emotional difficulties. And that's something I'm encouraging everyone on the call within your sphere of influence, not only just for yourself, but for people within your sphere of influence to actually also take it on yourself. You can do something in addressing those stigmas and making sure that the stigma don't fester. And of course, the final bit is actually about restricting means to suicide to stop suicidal acts at critical moments. So that means that one of the things you can do if you ever come across anyone whom you find or they disclose that they've got suicidal thoughts is to help them to clear out their home of any tablets they might have used or anything, any sharps, anything that could make them at risk, anything. In fact, some people who are in medication, for instance, what you could do for them is to actually hold their medication for them for that period when they're at risk. So there are little things that can be done that can actually result in big changes and big results. So the other point I want to make tonight is that collaboration is key. Collaboration is really very crucial. So it's not just one person doing it. It's not just one organization. I think that all bodies need to be working, from corporate to church to charity to communities. Everyone needs to come together and take it on as our responsibility to actually make this happen. So I'm just going to stop sharing now, and I'm going to show a video. And this video, and when after the video, I'm going to open up the conversation a bit, and then run through the latter part of tonight's presentation. So I'm going to I'm going to stop the video.
What's in a smile? A simple smile can mean little to you or I. But to someone thinking about suicide, it can be the first step towards life. Suicidal thoughts are complex. No one knows exactly what works to stop another tragedy, adding to the 800,000 suicides and 20 million attempted suicides a year. We do know, though, that certain actions can make a difference. And we know that if we put a wide range of these actions in place, we have a better chance of preventing suicides. Community support to counter the isolation so often felt. Responsible and sensitive media portrayals to help people see how others have managed. Local education to create awareness in the community. Restricting the means of suicide to stop people at critical moments. All these actions have been shown through research to work. But we can't do all this alone. We need people on the ground to help us make the first step towards those with suicidal thoughts. By stepping closer, we can be aware of those around us who need help. By stepping closer, we can encourage those with suicidal thoughts to reach out. By stepping closer, we can support those in need by sitting in their pain. Every step closer can connect someone to life and the help they want. Sometimes those steps are big. Sometimes all it takes is a smile.
And she's doing great work in that space. Now, the statistics you mentioned are not on this slide, but I'll just quickly go through them. I think the most prominent one, we know already that globally men are twice as likely to die from suicide than women. And also we know that in the UK, 3 out of 4 suicides are coming at 3 out of 4 suicides take place in men. However, the other thing that is prominent that Princess Bolaji was alluding to, which I spoke about on Sunday at our event, was the fact that only 1 out of 4 men in a survey that was carried out only 1 out of 4 men had any confiding relationship in their lives, anyone that they could speak to when it came to the crunch. However, 1 out of 3 men had said that in the last year they had been overwhelmed to the point in which 2 out of 3 of them had considered suicide at some point. They had suicidal thoughts. So the implication is that there are people who are overwhelmed, there are people who feel like they are at the brink of their roads, they are at the brink, they are on the end of their tethers, but only 25% of them felt able to confide in anyone about it. Of course, the challenge that creates is that's one of the reasons. It's a whole study on it. It's a whole world of research and studies and all sorts of things have been done about why are men more likely to take their lives than women do. There's what's called toxic masculinity, which is different. So quite a lot of things to do in that regard. It's a very relevant point you've raised, and I think that's one of the things that Tripart Care is taking on. That's one of the things that we're very passionate about, and some of the things we are doing now, and also some of the things we continue to do. For instance, I did say that we run workshops and that we run workshops for church communities, for church leaders who want to educate their congregation about mental health awareness programs. And that's part of the things I'm going to discuss towards the end of this. I'm just going to find my place back on the slides. Okay, good. So from the current slides. So how do we recognize people who are at risk? Because that's the crux of the matter. How do we recognize people who are at risk? There are things to look out for. I just said earlier that sometimes when you look at people's eyes, if you are keen enough, if you care to look, because that's one of the things in the modern world. Everybody is in a hurry, and everybody is so self-absorbed that we don't lift up our heads and just look at what's happening outside of where we live or outside of what our situation is like. So when we look at that, we find out that changes in personality or behavior of any sort, if somebody just becomes more withdrawn, they are more into themselves than they usually are. They change their behavior, they start avoiding social contacts. Somebody who usually socializes after church service, you find that as soon as they no longer get early into church, they just slip into church just before the opening prayer so that they don't have to interact with anyone. And by the time the final grace is being said, they're at the door. That might be, and this is something that is now recurring. And that might be a warning sign that this person, because when people are depressed, they don't want to interact with the world. They just don't want to engage with the world. Everything becomes a chore. So anxiety, irritability, being angry, being sad. Like I said, you can see social withdrawal, we've talked about it. When somebody begins to use substances, sometimes you can smell it in their breath. Sometimes you can just see that their eyes are glazed. Sometimes you can just see telltale signs, maybe the bottles in their homes. All of those things are warning signs. And of course, when there's a change in appetite, sleep, energy levels, it could be increased appetite, decreased appetite, or increased sleep or decreased sleep. All of those things. And of course, what they say, when they express thoughts that they are burdening some of other people, they feel, oh, I'm a burden on the church, I'm a burden on my family. I no longer feel like a man. I maybe because of unemployment, or maybe because there's been a loss, they just feel that maybe it's better to be out of here. When you hear those things, it's important to promote the conversations, to actually not let it go and just let it slip. And of course, when people start talking about final acts, they start giving themselves things away. They start giving things away. They start tidying up, putting their house in order. Of course, I'm not saying it's bad to write a will. I think every person who is an adult, who is an adult, who has anything asset to their name, and who is married or who has children, who has any responsibilities, should write a will. It's not that we're expecting to die now, but it's good. It's a sensible and safe thing to do. However, when you see somebody being duly engaged, overtly engaged in those type of things, then it will be that, and they start talking about giving properties or pets away, or that sort of thing might be a warning sign that all is not well. So what can you do? So how do you support? If you then get into a conversation and you find out that somebody is suicidal, what do you do? The Samaritan have given us an acronym. It's called SHOOSH, showing care, and which is what we've talked about today. I can see that in the chat, when we were showing the video, somebody talked about the fact that in the BME communities, we need to look out more for each other. We need to talk about these things more, and that every little help counts. Just that little act of kindness, showing care. The modern world has made it so difficult for us to go out of our way and look at other people and just look beyond ourselves and really express genuine care from interest in other people. You know, sometimes these days, when I receive a party, there are people that when I receive messages from them, either any social media message, I know before I open it, I know what's going to be there. I understand that there's a need, there's a request. And the world should not be like that. We should be able to just send it. I just want to check out, or I just want to check up on you and find out how you are doing. So showing care is the S. Having patience. Don't expect that. Sometimes you need to persevere. Don't expect that it's the first day you open or broach that conversation that the person will open up. They may, but they may not. But if you have a gut feeling, please persevere. If you have a gut feeling, please persevere. And I really think somebody needs to know that, hear that. If you have a gut feeling, please press. Don't say, oh, they are not opening up, so I'm closing my own doors as well. Because it may just be that perseverance that will save a life. Use open questions. how has your day been? What's life like for you these days? How are things with the business? How are things? Just be open questions usually help people to, you're not making any assumptions and you're not being judgmental. You're not putting any stigmas on people. And then say it back to them. It's always good to use the words. So this is having a conversation with somebody that you finally find, or you are blessed enough to pick up that they are suicidal. Say it back to them in terms of using their own words to repeat back to them what they've said. Because that helps you to, one, to develop rapport, because people, that person is actually thinking, okay, Ayodele is actually listening to me here. It's just used my own words. It's just said my own words back to me. One, it develops rapport. Secondly, it also helps the person not only to know that you're listening, but it also helps you to clarify with them whether what you believe, whether what you heard is correct or not. And have the courage to ask. A lot of people are, how about if I ask and I was wrong? How about if they think, oh, how could you have been thinking that about me? But the reality is that, how about if you asked and you were right? That's the question. That's the challenge, isn't it? How about if you asked and you were right? And how about if you were right and you didn't ask and then you became wrong? So it's just those thoughts to have in our minds. And that's been modeled by Tripart Care in also carrying that conversation further. So we know we should show care, we know we should have patience, we know we should use open questions, we know we should also have the courage to ask, but also on top of that, be authentic. Every one of us can bring our authentic self to conversations. We can really show care and not worry about whether we're mental health professionals or not, because at the bottom line, somebody who is suicidal is not looking for a mental health professional to have that conversation with. They are looking for a human being who cares and is non-judgmental and is present and is a listener. And that's what's important. Be cautious. Let's be cautious not to project our own thoughts and our own feelings, and also our preconceived ideas. Sometimes in church, we are guilty of that, unfortunately. Sometimes we can be judgmental. Sometimes we can label people and make them shut up and make them, yes, I can hear a mental professional protesting here and saying mental professionals care too. And that's true, mental professionals care. I'm just saying that you don't need to be a mental professional to care. Thank you for that comment. So be cautious. Let's be there for people and not be judgmental, and not find reasons why we think they're like the way they are, because that's also something. Sometimes we make statements that make us look like we are omnipotent and we are all knowing when we are not. So that just makes people shut up the more. And of course, confidentiality, that's a huge thing in church as well. That many times I hear in church groups, when I present at church groups, the common thing I hear almost recurrently is that, can I be sure that if I speak to leadership, my confidence will be kept? I want to say that that's something that church leaders need to work on, to really share information on a needs-to-know basis, and to also make sure that we can reassure people that their confidence will be kept only to be broken if their life is at risk or the life of other people at risk. And the good practice at such time is to actually let people know that I'm going to break confidence. So if you disclose to me something that I feel puts your life at risk or somebody else's life at risk, I'll let you know that I'm taking your consent to break confidentiality. And really, unfortunately, it's not negotiable, because at that point, I can't keep that information. I need to make sure I put plans in place to keep you safe. Distractions, let's make sure that when we're having those conversations, we remove every distraction, and we make sure that the phones are the television phones, all the gadgets, all the techie gadgets, and really just be there without any distractions, just having a very one human being to the other, and exchange. Be willing to give something of yourself. Dr. Shura has just shared something very personal to her. When you do that, when you come to the table, be willing to give something of yourself. Usually when I speak at mental awareness programs, particularly when I speak to young adults, I usually share the story of the ups and downs of my career journeys, so that some of them that are currently facing challenges in their career journeys will know that there's nothing new under the sun. And I tell them that, look, I'm here. And the fact that I'm here with the type of journey I've had and where I am now, I look back and I think it's possible it can be done. Thank God where we have, how far we've come. So it's just, I deliberately disclose that. I disclose the challenges I've had with imposter syndrome and how I've overcome that. I really share of myself because I really want them to know that this is not somebody who's on their high horse who is coming and preaching at them, but somebody who wants to walk alongside with them and hold their hands. Friendliness. When people disclose very personal things, I think it's good courtesy. It's courtesy and it works well to develop rapport, to actually thank them, to celebrate that, to actually end the conversation by saying, thank you for sharing the things you've shared. And these are the next steps. Let's agree next steps. How frequently am I going to contact you? How are we going to carry this forward? And these are the things we are going to agree to. And what are the means of contacting you? What are the next steps? So that's in a nutshell. I think this slide in a nutshell summarizes the last two slides are what to do in discussing. And the values that we need to bring to the distressed in order to make that rapport work: authenticity, attentiveness. I've talked about attentiveness, just being a good listener, being authentic, reciprocity, wanting to share something of yourself, parity, that I'm not standing on my high horse, I'm the healthcare professional, I'm the pastor here, I'm the one who has all knowledge, but actually I'm coming as one human being to the other to really engage with you. And of course, confidentiality and celebration, which I've said. Those are the checklists that you want to, that's the checklist you want to think about when you are having that conversation. Am I in a good headspace myself? Am I willing to genuinely listen? It's not like there are 1,001 things going through my mind, and whilst they're talking to me, I'm thinking about I haven't prepared dinner yet. Oh, I haven't finished that term paper. Oh, I need to send an email to Dr. X. I need to reply to the text message that my daughter sent. All of those are not going on. This is just space for this particular person. I'm prepared for them to open up, because the reality is that sometimes when we ask, how are you in church? Or even in the corporate world, sometimes people ask you how you are, but when they are not willing to listen. They are not, it's just a cliche. It's just something that we say, but they are not really in a space where they're willing to actually take that in and respond to it. So I've chosen a place that is private and comfortable. That's also very important, where people are going to be able to open up without feeling that somebody else is going to drop on the conversation. And a good website to go on to if you really want to develop your skills and learn more. They have a lot of videos on there. It's an Australian website, www.ruok.org.au. It's an Australian website. Lots of information on there. They've got lots of YouTube videos as well that can actually help you in terms of thinking about having those conversations. So I was talking about how the role of employers, particularly if you're an employer, you have some responsibility to your employees, and some of the things that 3 out of 5 employees experience mental health issues because of work. That's huge. 60% of people who say they experience mental health issues because of work. And also that's the amount of money that it costs the UK, 33 to 42 billion, not million, billion each year. And I work in mental health services. I know many people that I see every day who tell me that they are off work because of their mental conditions. Stress, depression accounts for about 44% of all work-related ill cases. So almost about 50% of work-related issues has to do with mental and emotional well-being. And look at that amount of working days. 54% of all working days due to ill health in 2018 to 2019. Well, as a result of mental problems, stress, and depression. So it's huge. So employers, any employer of labor here today, anyone who is responsible, who is the leader of a team, who is a manager, who is a church leader, who runs a department, who runs a community organization, charity, there's a responsibility you've got. And if at least to educate your community and share that information with them, such that everyone can look out for each other, and also to create a culture. Leaders can actually create a culture in their communities, a supportive culture. You can create an hostile culture. You can create an angry and irritable culture. It all depends on what you really want the culture of your organization to be like, and it has to come from leadership. It has to come from the top. So thinking about what can you do, what can you do as an organization? The drive has to be from board level. It has to be from top down. That's the only way it's going to work, because it's got to be backed up with gravitas. It's got to be backed up with the ability to make it happen. Sometimes it needs to be backed up with policy. For instance, in our church, over the past year, we've been working on a mental policy, and we now have a mental policy in place. We've trained all our staff and all our leaders for safeguarding. We've done safeguarding training, but also we've moved on to actually a whole Sunday. About 6 weeks ago, we actually dedicated a whole Sunday from 9 a.m. from 10 a.m. when the service started till about 3 p.m., which was an extended service to mental awareness training. And that's something that is doable. Every church can do that. So culture of being supportive rather than toxic, training your staff, and then having mental champions. We do have a mental awareness. We do have a mental team in church, and celebrating key mental awareness days. So when there's a mental awareness days, the mental awareness day to look out for will be there's a mental awareness week in May, usually the middle week, the second week in May. There is also the World Suicide Prevention Day on the 10th of September, and the 10th of October, which is just coming, is the World Mental Day. And the other things that you can do is to have a vibrant and active mentoring system in place, particularly for the young adults and the youth, and to look out for new joiners, to really have a system in place where people who newly join can be well taken care of. And also to challenge bullying and discrimination in any of your organizations, not only in church, in any organization, in your corporate organization, let people know that if they are bullied, then the organization will stand up for them. So bringing it closer to church, what are the things that we can do? Global awareness, they have talked about that. You can use that as an opportunity to actually broach that issue, because a lot of church leaders are worried and they don't know where to start from. Tripart Care can help in doing that. We can deliver that training. We can deliver that awareness. We can actually either on Zoom or face-to-face. So church leaders to become knowledgeable themselves. I will share a few resources at the end in a minute or so now. Also have church mental awareness days, like I've said. Use the local mental professionals in your organization. It's amazing how much resources we've got lying redundant in church. I believe that there's a reason why those people are there. And part of the reasons why God sent them there, so that they can fulfill their purposes, so that they can fulfill their roles, and making and harnessing the abilities and the resources that they bring from their corporate world and from their secular jobs can be a very powerful thing. And also not being the superhero, Superman, got it all together, everything is chic and nice leader. A leader who is in touch, a leader who actually says, yeah, just like everyone has their moments, I do have my own moments as well. Because that helps people, it gives people permission to be vulnerable. It gives people permission to open up when the leader is not a mega larger than life character. And I've said confidentiality is key, and we can see that I've emphasized that a number of times, because that's one of the most prominent messages I want to exchange to church community today. And finally, this resources. Like I said, this video is going to be uploaded onto YouTube, onto our Tripart Care YouTube channel. So if you wanted to refer to these resources again, they'll be there on the channel. I wanted to refer to this, the very bottom, the last link. It's an article that was published. It was I wrote an article for the Evangelical Alliance, and it was published about 2 weeks ago, I think on the 4th of September or so. That's the link to it. It actually gives a blow-by-blow account of how church leaders can broach the issue of talking about mental well-being. And in the Testify magazine Testify newspaper coming out in October, either the first one or the second one, Testify newspaper, there are 2 editions, one on the 1st of the month and one on the 15th. either of them, one of them is also going to feature an adapted form of that article. So if there's anyone who wants to read it, that will be the place to go to. Aware that at times. So those are the resources. Samaritans, Are You Okay? Calm Zone is actually a mental health organization. It's a charity that supports the mental well-being of men. Princess Folaji, that's one of the answers to the question you raised about what can we do for our men. And one of the other answers to that question is we can actually take mental well-being to men rather than expect them to come to us. Go to the rugby clubs, go to the men's meetings, go to the men's social clubs, go to the sports organizations, go to the gym. Those are the places where men meet, and that's probably where we need to. Papyrus is for young people. It's really, so if you've got a young adult that you want to support with their mental well-being, that would be the organization. So we also have a WhatsApp group. Tripart Care has a WhatsApp group. I'm going to share the links to the WhatsApp group for those who want to join. I put information there, mental health information and emotional well-being information. I try to update that every day. So, and we also have a YouTube channel. We've currently got about 48 videos, and this will be uploaded onto, and that's always been upgraded, updated. We are going to be looking at what is therapy in the sessions to come in the next few months, where it's a monthly meeting, like you know, and we are going to be looking at next month. It's every last Thursday of the month. And we're going to look at food and mental well-being. We're going to look at trauma, managing trauma. People have experienced trauma within and out of church, and they don't know how to deal with it. Some of them, including racial trauma, social media, and mental health. And like I said, if you wanted to put this on any social media platform, please put the hashtag Tripart Care. And I've talked about the services we render in terms of we deliver mental health education to churches and to church leaders as well. And I did say I was going to make a big announcement, which is that currently we are preparing a 4-week program specifically for church leadership in terms of really engaging with your church community in terms of mental well-being. And that's going to be a virtual thing, and it's going to be very early next year. I know most churches would usually take January to pray and to fast. So it's going to be very early, either at the end of January or very early in February. And that's going to be a 4-week course. It's going to be online this way. Most likely going to be the Thursday evenings and 4 weeks back to back, where we can have these conversations in a more in-depth way. And we can actually address some of the things I've highlighted in terms of what depression, what stress. How do you support people in that in your organization? And that's the QR link to QR code to the WhatsApp group. So if you took a photo of that and you clicked on it, it will lead you to the group. And if you wanted to join, and those are my contact details again. I'm always happy for people to contact by email, go to our YouTube channel, watch some of the videos on there. That's my LinkedIn page and Instagram as well. And let's, I know we've got only a few minutes left, but yes, the shareable flyer will be, thank you, Princess Folaji, the shareable flyer will be out very soon. That's going to be out in a few weeks. As soon as we firm dates, that will be out. Thank you very much. So any comments, questions? We've got only, I'm going to stop sharing and then I can see everyone's.
I think it's very necessary for us to be our brother's keeper in this age and time, especially in Nigeria, where people will die and it will take 4 or 5 days before people will realize that they're dead in the house. Locked up. Many people are lonely, even in the UK. Many people are so lonely. We're living isolated lives, and I think it's the work schedule and all that that's keeping us busy. But don't let us be under Satan's yoke. Let us look for our brothers. Find a way of communicating with somebody at least a day. Somebody that would know if something is wrong with you, they would know immediately. that, oh, I've not heard from Brother Ajayi today, let me look for him. I think that's also very essential, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, sir. I couldn't agree with you more that we can all, the challenge I'm going to throw to us as we conclude today is this, that what one thing are you going to do differently as a result of today? So for some of us, it will be 2, 3. What one thing are you going to do differently? When are you going to take action on it? That's secondly, who is going to be your accountability partner, and when are you going to assess the situation? So that's me done. I'm going to take a final comment from Ms. Hannah or Mrs. Hannah, and then we will round up. Thank you everyone for coming today. Thank you for joining us. There are several members of my family here. My wife, my daughters are both here. My sister-in-law and brother-in-law from Nigeria, Tosin and Yinka Kibu are here. Quite a lot of people who are here. Thank you so much. I think my twin brother is also here, and my younger brother has joined us from the States. Please let's take your final that final comment, and then we'll round up. And I can see Dr. Oyegbade, who has also joined us from Nigeria, who is my medical school colleague. Right. So Funshaw, my co-host, Jemima, my very eminent and able co-host, Jemima and both Jemima and my daughter Buyukumi have been co-hosts all through the sessions, and I really do appreciate the insight that they bring. So please let's have that final comment. I can see somebody. Yes, please go ahead. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing those very personal things with us. I really do appreciate that, and thank you. That's really very brave, and really, I'm so pleased that you've shared that. Yes, that's a myth that we have, particularly in the Black community as well, that people get sectioned when they go to ask for help. That's not true. A section is something that we use very at the extreme end of the spectrum. That's one. And secondly, there's safeguarding systems in place to make sure that one maverick psychiatrist doesn't just wake up one day and says, I'm going to detain you. It doesn't happen, because before that decision is made, 2 psychiatrists who are very senior people and also a social worker whose role is to protect the interest of the patient needs to be involved, and all 3 of them need to agree. Without all 3 of them being in agreement, that the detention in hospital will not take place. So I encourage you to please go and speak to your GP. And the fact that people are on medication for a long, forever or for a long time is not also entirely accurate, because the reality is that there are people who don't even get given medication. There is social prescribing that we do. There is talking therapies. In fact, talking therapies and exercise and lifestyle management is the first thing that we actually encourage people to do. I'm quite aware that our time is well spent, and so I'm going to say that thank you everyone for attending. If you do need to leave, please do feel free to leave. The meeting is now formally closed. However, I think it was crucial to address this question. So Ms. Anna, please do, I encourage you to please go back to your GP and really confide in them and let them know exactly what's happening, because people are more likely to be sectioned because they wait to get help. They are afraid that some people say my children will be taken, social services will be involved, and they don't then get the help. By the time they get the help, it's such that the help is forced on them because things have got to a head, and the only way to move things forward is for them to be detained in hospital. So thank you for sharing that very personal information, but I do please encourage you to return to your GP and discuss the options that are available to you. Thank you everyone for coming today. I really appreciate you. And thank you all, and have a good night, and please keep creating hope by your actions. God bless.